Hi and welcome to my first video on computer modding. In this multi-part series, I will show you a variety of modifications that I've performed on an aging computer case of mine that I wasn't yet ready to retire. The case subject is the discontinued X-Blade model from ATOP Technologies. I originally acquired this case to build my first water-cooled SLI system. The cost of two top-of-the-line GPUs and water cooling equipment left little in the budget for fancy enclosure. The X-Blade suited me fine, but did reveal some shortcomings, and if I was going to keep this case for the next build, I was going to address those issues. In this segment, I'll show you how I've dealt with the poor air circulation. The following mods are not strictly limited to this model and can be performed on similar chassis. First off, I installed this 120mm fan on top of the case. This involved cutting out a circle with a jigsaw and drill 4 holes for the screws. I installed a fan grill and rubber trim over the edge. I've seen quite a few inquiries in public forums about this rubber edge trim, and although specialized PC retailers are getting with the trend, I couldn't find it locally. After extensive research on what I needed exactly, I ended up ordering it from McMaster-Carr. For those of you interested, this is what I got. I used 2 different kinds for the 2 various thicknesses of the case. This stuff worked great for me, and it's cheap too. Next is this 250mm fan on the side panel to replace the noisy and quite useless 80mm one that came standard with the case. Shown here is the fan in question. It's not very common, but a few specialized vendors do carry them. I got lucky with this one and got it from a local retailer who happened to have 1 unit, no box, no instructions. They let me have it for $5. Normally I think they retail for around $20. Needless to say, I took it. The installation, however, was much trickier than it looked, especially on an X-Blade panel. It does not install like traditional case fan. Here's how it comes together. This fan kit came in 3 parts: the bezel, the grill, and the fan unit. The first thing to know is that you cut your hole not for the fan, but for the grill to fit through. So the hole has to be around 2mm wider than the diameter of the fan housing. The grill is concave and has a narrow brim along its circumference. It fits through the hole while its brim rests flat against the edge of the hole. Due to the initial design of the X-Blade side panel, I didn't have to cut into the metal, since there's a cutout there already big enough. I only had to cut the hole into the window. So I've got my hole cut into the window and the grill fits into it. Now comes the bezel. The bezel has 4 perpendicular screw pegs that extend from its back. These pegs is what the fan unit sits on and is secured to with screws. The back of the bezel also has 4 screw holes to secure it against the panel. So what I did next was drill 4 holes into the metal panel. Those holes are for the 4 screws I mentioned earlier that secure the grill and the bezel to the panel. Once again, due to the design of the X-Blade side panel, I didn't have to drill the 4 peg holes into the metal, as these openings shown here provide clearance already. I then drilled 8 holes into the acrylic window, 4 for the bezel pegs and 4 for the bezel screws. The window comes back into place with the 4 screw holes lining up with the matching holes on the metal panel. Then comes the bezel with its 4 pegs slipping through the holes in the window. Then comes the grill, it slips through the hole, followed by 4 screws that secure both the grill and the bezel to the panel. And finally, the fan unit. The fan housing also goes through the hole but sits atop the 4 pegs of the bezel and is then secured on those pegs by 4 narrow 3/4 inch screws. By the way, my fan kit didn't come with any screws. So if you're contemplating getting one of these, be sure to ask if it comes with hardware. Otherwise, you'll need 2 types of screws, 4 3/8 inch screws with wide flatheads for the bezel and 4 3/4 inch flathead narrow screws for the fan. Now, because I knew I was going to have tubing passing across close to the fan, I wanted to reduce the space that the fan was taking up depth-wise inside the case as much as I could. The fan rests on the 4 pegs and there was room between the fan housing and the grill, I'd say about 6 mm or so. So by shortening the pegs by around 6 mm, I got the housing to rest directly against the grill. I really think this is how it should have come as in the first place. Now, we're not out of the woods just yet with this fan. 2 steps remain. First, the panel on the X-Blade has a bunch of these decorative protruding chrome rivets at the front. These actually serve as anchor points for the screws that secure the window to the panel, so they are essential. The problem is that 4 of them prevent the bezel from sitting flat against the panel. To get around that, I had to Dremel out 4 little notches in the bezel, as you can see here. Finally, because this is a mid-tower, space inside is restricted. This portion of the frame initially blocked the fan and prevented full closure of the panel. So to get around this problem, I cut off this section from the chassis to provide full clearance to the fan housing. Now, I'm sure many of you would like to know if this installation was worth the hassle. Yes, definitely. This fan pulls a lot of air in the case and is extremely quiet. I've got it hooked up to the fan controller, but I almost always have it running full blast as it's all so quiet. I'm very happy with the final result and how the fan performs. Of course, this is in keeping with the appreciation of modding and enjoying the fruits of your labor.